Good morning. This is the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. This is our Wednesday normal business meeting. It is May 3rd. We will start with roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Ackerman.
Here.
Commissioner Cross.
Present.
Commissioner McGowan.
Here.
Commissioner Mesner.
Here.
Commissioner Oath. Commissioner Ray.
Here.
Commissioner Robbins.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 6 out of 7 commissioners present.
Okay. Good to see everybody. Good morning. Our first item on the agenda is commissioner comments. Does any commissioner have any comments for the good of the cause? Seeing no comments, we will move to consent agenda with 2 hearing officer recommendations under Rule 505. Does anyone have questions with regard to consent? Seeing no questions, do we have a motion to approve consent?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve consent. All those in favor, it signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, consent carries. We did not have anyone sign up for public comment, just noting that for the record, nor did we have any written comment this morning from any members of the public. With that, we will turn to docket 221-000-283. This is the first of a financial assurance plan consideration by the commissioners. A year or so ago, we finalized our financial assurance rules. It requires each and every operator within the state to file a financial assurance plan with the commission. Some of those plans are administratively approved. Others come to this commission for hearing and review by the commission. We are starting the first of those hearings this morning. We have the financial assurance plan as presented by COGCC USA Incorporated. And I see that we have Ms. Jost available to provide a presentation. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you. If you are ready, I believe we have everyone on. I see Mike Wardinsky, Tony Newville, and Brian Owens. So I think we're good to go.
Very good. The floor is yours, or the screen is yours.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, good morning again, Chair, Commissioner, staff, and members of the public. My name is Jamie Jost, managing shareholder of Jost Energy Law, and I, along with my partner, Kelsey Wesselwinkie, are here today with COGCC USA Inc. with the first Rule 702B and 702D Option 6 Financial Assurance Plan application. COGCC is pleased to be able to present this Option 6 plan to you today, and we look forward to our discussion. As a brief background, COGCC submitted its Form 3 and corresponding Option 6 Financial Assurance Plan application to this commission on October 31st, 2022, in compliance with the dates established by the commission. In its application, COGCC described each requirement under Rule 702D6 and provided evidence in support of its compliance with each requirement of the rule for COGCC, as well as its associated entities that will be covered by the Option 6 $40 million comprehensive bond. At the conclusion of our presentation, COGCC respectfully requests that the Commission approve this Option 6 plan. And COGCC has also requested, for clarification purposes and administrative efficiency, that this commission confirm that it is not required to file a financial assurance plan hearing application with each subsequent Form 3 it submits to the commission upon approval of this plan. Mr. Brian Owens, President and General Manager of the Rockies, will provide a few comments to start our presentation today. And then Mr. Mike Wardinsky, the Engineering Regulatory Advisor for COGCC, will provide testimony today in support of COGCC's Form 3 and Rule 702D6 requirements. We also have an additional subject matter expert, Ms. Tony Newville, Regulatory Manager, who will be available for any questions that we don't answer during our presentation. Thank you. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Brian Owens.
Good morning, Chair Robbins and Commissioners. My name is Brian Owens, and I am the President and General Manager of the Rockies for COGCC USA Inc. I've been with COGCC for over 23 years and have been substantially involved with the COGCC team in each of the recent COGCC rulemakings, including the 700 series financial assurance rulemaking. COGCC's highest priority is to conduct our business in a manner that protects public health, safety, and welfare of citizens and communities, our employees, and the environment and wildlife resources. And Oxy is committed to ensuring that it has the highest level of financial assurance available under the 700 series rules to further our commitments in and to the state of Colorado. Oxy is among the largest producers of oil and natural gas in the DJ Basin and leaseholders in Colorado. Through its subsidiaries, Oxy has operated in the DJ Basin for over 30 years and has proven to be a consistent leader in the Colorado policy arena and driver regulatory change, as evidenced by Oxy's collaboration and coordination with ENGOs, governmental agencies, local governments, the public, and members of industry in the COGCC financial assurance rulemaking. As shown by our intensive well plugging and abandonment program in the DJ Basin, Oxy has demonstrated a longstanding commitment to its asset retirement responsibilities. Under Oxy's asset retirement program, Oxy has plugged and abandoned over 300 wells in the past year, about 900 wells in the past 3 years, and about 2,300 wells in the past 5 years. Oxy's asset retirement program not only includes wells, but also the facilities, equipment, and flow lines relating to the retiring of wells that result in increased reclamation and return of land to the surface owner, and the reduction of cumulative impacts. Oxy has consistently shown its financial capability by complying with the past COGCC financial assurance requirements by maintaining an approximate $44 million bond for the past several years, and as noted in my certificate of financial capability, by confirming our current financial capacity for the option 6 comprehensive bond in each 10K and 10Q filing with the SEC. Oxy appreciates the COGCC staff's hard work on reviewing Oxy's Form 3 information and the corresponding financial assurance plan hearing application. And Oxy also appreciates the director's recommendation that the commission accept Oxy's option 6 financial assurance plan for a $40 million comprehensive bond. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Owens. Appreciate you being with us. Go ahead, Ms. Jess.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and Mr. Mike Wardynski is going to take over the presentation from here. Mr. Wardynski, can you see the screen okay? Mike, I believe we're having trouble hearing you.
Yeah, you seem to be muted, Mr. Wardynski.
Okay, it looks like you're off mute now. Do you want to try it out? Mr. Chair, if we could just have a minute.
Yeah, I think he may want to log out and log back in and make sure he hits the audio correctly.
Yep, that sounds great. Thank you. Thank you for the extra few minutes on this chair. We apologize for the technical difficulties.
All right.
And Cherry says he's back in the Zoom and he just needs to be elevated to the panelist if that's okay.
All right, Ms. Larson or Ms. Amaro, if we could go track down Mr. Rudsky.
Thank you.
Testing 1, 2, 3, Mike. Still can't hear you.
Did that change the audio at all?
Yeah, that actually did a really good
Okay.
job.
My apologies. Thank you so much. I will start where I was. Jamie, make sure I can see the slide you're presenting.
Okay, and Mike, I'm on slide 2, the presentation overview.
I'm sorry, bear with me one more second.
Yep, no worries. Thank you again, Chair and Commissioners.
Very good. Our presentation today will cover pertinent items in the 700 Rule Series to demonstrate Oxy's financial assurance. As mentioned, my name is Mike Wardynski. I'm an engineering regulatory advisor at Oxy. I have worked for Oxy and its predecessor companies for 13 years here in Denver, supporting our DJ Basin assets. Next slide, please. Today, Oxy USA Inc. and all its Colorado operating entities request that the Commission approve its Option 6, Rule 702C6 and 702D6 Financial Assurance Plan pursuant to its Form 3. Next slide, please. As mentioned moments ago by Rocky's President and General Manager Brian Owens, Oxy is amongst the largest producers in Colorado. We prioritize health, safety, and welfare of citizens and communities, our employees, and the environment and wildlife resources through all of our operations. Oxy has a robust plugging track record, and collaborated with COGCC staff and other stakeholders during this financial assurance rulemaking. Next slide, please. Oxy currently has itself and 7 other entities. However, only Oxy USA Inc. and Kerr-McGee operate wells. The 27 wells operated by Oxy USA Inc. represent our Sheep Mountain unit in Huerfano County. The 4,494 wells operated by Kerr-McGee are located in the DJ Basin in the northeast part of the state. Next slide, please. To determine financial assurance option 6, under 702C6A, our gas oil ratio was 9,780 standard cubic foot per barrel for the previous 12 months when we filed our Form 3 on October 31st last year. Our wells averaged 74 barrel of oil equivalent per day at that time. This gas oil ratio and production average is consistent today. Oxy is a public company pursuant to the Securities and Exchange Commission Act of 1934 per our corporate 10-K filing. We reported 283 BCF and 29 million barrels of oil in the previous 12 months when we filed our Form 3. Again, this production is consistent today. Next slide, please. As of October 31st, 2022, we are operating 4,494 wells, with approximately half of those producing. I will show a chart of this later in the presentation. Next slide, please. Per our Form 3 submittal, again on October 31st last year, we've plugged over 1,600 wells in the last 4 years. For historical context, we had plugged approximately 700 wells each year in 2017 and 2018. We plugged only 241 wells in 2020 due to the change in commodity price and the pandemic. This year in 2023, we are projected to plug greater than 350 wells to facilitate new well development of our assets and offset operators in the DJ Basin, as well as compliance towards our out of service obligations. Next slide, please. Per 702D6A IV, we reported 30 inactive wells on Form 5B sundries in December of 2022. This figure is less than 1% of all of our operated wells. Advance the slide, please. To put into context of all of our operated wells, and as I mentioned previously, here is a breakout of our well status. PR stands for producing, IJ injecting, WO waiting on completion, AP approved permit, DG drilling, TA temporarily abandoned, and SI shut in. The pie chart shows greater than half of our wells are producing. Advance the slide, please. Our 30 inactive wells have this as a well designation, though their well status is either TA or shut in. Advance the slide, please. Furthermore, nearly all the remainder of our TA and shut-in wells have the out of service well designation that I will talk about on a subsequent slide. Next slide, please. Our asset retirement plan consists of the following. Plugging of existing wells occurs for a variety of reasons, including offset development with new wells, sub-economic production, and mechanical problems or obstructions. For all of Oxy's assets, age of infrastructure is managed with mechanical integrity programs that comply with COGCC 1104 flowline integrity management rules. Out of service plugging count for each year is improbable to forecast due to potential changes in technology, supply chain fluctuations, or other unseen events. However, Oxy will show progress towards plugging commitments annually on its Form 6B and every 3 years during Rule 702C6 Financial Assurance Review. Next slide, please. President and General Manager of Oxy's Rockies Business Unit, Brian Owens, has certified our financial capability to meet the commitments of an Option 6 operator under 702C6D. Next slide, please. Based on the director's recommendation, our bonding will become 40 million under 702 for plugging, abandonment, and reclamation, 505,000 under 703 for other oil and gas operations, namely E&P waste management facilities, seismic operations, gas gathering, processing, and underground storage, produced water transfer systems. And finally, 100,000 under 704 for surface owner protection bonds. Next slide, please. We submitted 3 Form 6A sundries for out-of-service wells in 2022, totaling 1,832 wells. As of April 1st, 2023, we have plugged 11%, or around 209 wells of this total. An additional 14% will be plugged by the end of the year with our current P&A rig schedule, which will leave 75% to be P&A'd with final reclamation by the year 2030. Given this remainder, we will need to be able to P&A approximately 230 wells per year to meet this obligation. And as I have presented, we have averaged more than 230 P&As per year historically. Advance the slide, please. In context with all of our operated wells, less than half of our total is TA and shut-in well status. Advance the slide, please. Overlaying the 1,832 out-of-service well designation accounts for approximately 35% of the total and nearly all of our TA and shut-in wells. Advance the slide, please. Now I will explain the table showing the out-of-service priority categories. Starting with the all categories, as I mentioned, 11% have been plugged through April 1st, and an additional 14% will be plugged by year end, leaving 75% when we begin 2024. For wells within 2,000 foot of a school facility, we'll begin 2024 with 34% remaining in this category. For wells within 2,000 foot of a childcare center, we'll begin 2024 with only 12% remaining in this category. This table also illustrates the other remaining priority categories. Next slide, please. This slide details all of the notice parties for our financial assurance filing. Next slide, please. I will close with this slide again, requesting the commissioners approve our option 6 financial assurance plan. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Wardynski. And Chair, that wraps up our presentation on the financial assurance hearing application. And I see Tony Newville has joined us. Thank you, Tony. And we are open for any questions that you may have.
You're muted, Mr. Chair.
I have a double mute system, so I only unmuted one of them. Sorry. First question, and I think the commissioners know the answer to this, but for those that may be listening in, Mr. Wardynski, can you provide some perspective around the out of service program and like why that exists, why you use it, what it means if a well is on it, how that impacts your financial assurance? I think that would be some good background information for everybody.
Chair Robbins, thank you. So these wells have been evaluated for P&A, and as you can see from the total we presented, it would not be probable to plug these wells in the time frame of the existing rules. So this financial assurance rulemaking created this system where operators were allowed to, given a date in the future, and allowed us to put wells on this list. They cannot be produced again, and they're in a status now where they'll be awaiting P&A. I hope I've answered your question.
And so those wells, there's 1,832 that are on the out of service list, if I jotted that down correctly, and you've got a little over 4,000 total wells, but those 1,832, they're not going to produce into the future. They're just on a list in which at some point you will, as business allows, you will plug them.
Correct, Chair. As business allows, however, we must meet, those priority categories per the rule in a timely fashion, and also show progress per the rule as well.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thanks for that explanation. Commissioners, the panel is available for questions. Commissioner Messner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation and the application. I did have a couple of questions, and it's going to be regarding Rule 702D6, and specifically the asset retirement planning. The rule, as I read it, indicates that for each inactive well, the operator will identify the reason for no or low production and the planned date to return to production or plug the well. And I've looked in the application, and there is a spreadsheet that's provided for your inactive wells, and then a planned return to production date and a planned plugging date, as well as some other information. But help me understand why all of the planned plugging dates are 12/31/29 for the most part, rather than I guess a more pragmatic staggered approach in order to be able to clearly meet the obligations of the rule.
Yes, Commissioner Messner. So as I presented, it is improbable to forecast how all these wells are going to get plugged. I mean, 1,800 wells is not something you could just say that, these wells are going to be plugged each year and actually meet those. So the best thing to do would be to say, like I just, answered for Chair Robbins, that we will need to show progress each year on the Form 6B, and then every 3 years at a bigger, format when we present that we're making progress towards these goals.
Okay, and I understand that for the out of service. I guess I'm looking at an inactive well list that has a total of 135 wells, and so I guess I was just a little confused whether those are on the out of service list or whether those are other inactive wells that there's an anticipated plugging date associated with those. I mean, I understand that you indicated that you're going to have to plug 230 a year in order to be able to meet your out of service plugging obligations, is the way I understand it. But what is this? What is the list that indicates there's 135 wells, but yet they still just have a kind of last date available? So it doesn't seem there was a lot of analysis that went into that.
Yes, Commissioner Messner. A lot of that had to do with the timing of filing the Form 3 in the end of October last year. And then between then and the end of the year, we had filed, like I said, 3 Form 6A out of service. So some of those wells that we saw when we were filing our Form 3, the list of 100 you mentioned, we noticed that those, when we made that Form 3, that those weren't active. And we worked with our teams to say, how are we going to dispose or, do a disposition on these wells? And the ultimate evaluation was to add them to subsequent Form 6s. So in the timing of how that was filed, it looks as though we have more. But today, like I presented, we only have 30 inactive wells.
Okay. I guess as far as meeting the spirit of the rule, it does give me a little bit of heartburn to just have, a date uncertain 7 years from now, 6 years from now, rather than actual, which I'm seeing from other operators, at least having some clarity as far as, what the goal would be or what the anticipated date would be, rather than just the last possible date. As we had discussions around, this within the option 6, it was pretty clear during the rulemaking that this was an important piece, which was the kind of clarity around asset retirement planning. And so I'll just make a comment on that.
Others with questions, Commissioner McGowan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm going to preface my questions by thank you for being the first to go through this. Just when I'm starting to get the hang of OGDPs, we jump into financial assurance. And so I'm just, thank you for your patience as I try to work our way through the rules. And so I am trying to find in the rules. I'm recalling, to Commissioner Messner's point, the discussion about the out of service list was a committed time frame within which that portfolio would get P&A'd. Am I on the right track?
Yes, Chair, or Commissioner, yes, you're correct.
Okay, and I had thought that we put a time frame within which to do this, and of course now a day late and a dollar short, madly trying to find that that time frame, and I thought we had said 6 years, and now I don't see it in our rules anymore, which is maybe why there's some confusion about a date certain. So the discussion when we were going through mission change was not wanting, because these wells don't have to be included for financial assurance, the incentive was those wells are all going to get P&A timely. And so I think because there's just this outlying date where they're all going to get P&A'd, as a commissioner, right? I'm worried that we're going to get to the end date and things will not have gotten plugged, and we're going to have this slug of wells at the end, even though I do understand that you have shown every year you are P'ing and A'ing wells. And so I'm wondering if there's something we could do instead of just by the end, it will all be fine, and we're just going to put an end date for all the wells, because it's really hard for us to guess how much we're going to plug every year. I mean, you're plugging about 300. Is there some way we could put some interim milestones in?
Yeah,
Am I
Commissioner
missing
McGowan-
something? Yeah, go ahead.
Commissioner McGowan, it might be helpful to bring up Deputy Director Cuthbertson, who might be able to speak to it, because I think there's some form of like annual review that goes on that in which we check in. But Director Cuthbertson.
Thanks, Chair. So having the privilege of having lived financial assurance for the last 3 or 4 months, I still remember some of the details. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't. So there is a deadline in Rule 434, Commissioner McGowan, is where you're looking for the deadlines. And it's based on the number of wells that were provided in the 6A at the time that it was provided. And it is a deadline. But more importantly, and I think to the concern that maybe you and Commissioner Messner have raised, is the annual review section of the FA rules directs the director to review annually those plugging programs. And if the operator is not making progress, reasonable progress in the eyes of the director on their plugging program on an annual basis, the director the rules direct us to request more financial assurance, to increase the financial assurance that's required to make sure that that there is no undue burden remaining in that last year, right? So that things don't wait to the last minute. So that is something that is in our annual review protocol. Right now, we are in the throes of obviously approving the initial plans. The next step in that process is the federal exemption expiration in October, and then we'll implement the annual review program to begin to do our annual reviews. And part of that annual review is an analysis of these out-of-service well plugging programs, as well as other plugging programs from other rule requirements, not just the out-of-service wells, but the out-of-service well program specifically will be part of our annual review protocol.
Thank you, Mr. Cuthbertson. Commissioner McGowan.
Thank you, Mr. Cuthbert, the Deputy Director Cuthbertson. Sorry. So, what is the time frame within which they're supposed to show the end date? How many years? So this is what I'm struggling to find, and I know we talked about it, but maybe we let that go.
No, it's in Rule 434 D4, and there are termination dates for each list, right? That's the way the rules are structured. So depending on how many wells are on the list, you get so many years to plug the wells that are on that list. But the demonstration is annual, right? The director is looking for an annual demonstration of progress on that plugging program. Otherwise, there will be additional financial assurance required to make sure that we have the resources to properly plug and abandon those wells. That's my sense of the rules structure.
Okay, so can we put guardrails around what that number should look like each year? Before you, so if you don't, so let's say the number is 0 next year, which I don't think it's going to be, but let's say the number is 0. Does it come to the commission for discussion, or does the director do something?
So my understanding of the rules is the director would require additional financial assurance from the operator. The operator could either provide that, or they could appeal that requirement to the commission. Because of the number of variabilities in these programs, you know, I don't think the rules contemplated it. I don't remember any conversation in the statement of basis of purpose about, you know, trying to set some cadence. I think it would be really difficult to do that pragmatically. And so I think that's where the direction to have the director do an annual review of have they made appropriate progress on their plugging program in the end review came from. So that's my perspective of the rules. But maybe somebody remembers something I don't.
Ms. Jost?
Chair, thank you. And Mr. Cuthbertson, thank you for that explanation. We're in full agreement. And Commissioner McGowan, I think specifically the year you're looking for in this instance is 7 years. Under Rule 434D 4B, Roman at 4, it's a long rule, states that for a Form 6A that contains 250 or more wells, then the plugging shall occur no later than December 31st, 2030. And so that is where Oxy is getting its last date of 2029. But to echo Mr. Cuthbertson, each year there is an annual review of the 6 Bs and of the out of service list. And as you heard Mr. Wardynski testify, Oxy has to do at least 230 a year to meet its requirements to P&A all of the wells on its list. And so I'm hoping that helps maybe confirm some of the questions that you have with respect to the length of time, but also, you know, there is some form of cadence here with Oxy because of the minimal amounts that would need to be P&A'd, as Mr. Wardynski testified to. So I hope that helps provide some additional color on that for Oxy's perspective.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think for me as a commissioner, I don't want us to get to year 7 and all of a sudden be having a discussion about why all the wells on the out of service list or a large proportion of them still need to be P&A'd, because I think that's really bad management on our part. And I realize we're trying to give flexibility. And I'm sorry, I'm not saying anything about Oxy or how you all are operating. I just want to make sure that whoever is coming to us and saying, I have this out of service list and I'm obligated to do it, and I'll have them all done by the final year in which I'm supposed to have them done. And so I'm just trying to figure out, I just want to make sure that we do not end in a situation like that. I think it would be most unfortunate if we did, because the trade-off for the out of service list, if I'm remembering our conversations correctly during mission change, right, was you're not going to have to bond those as part of financial assurance because you are going to be P&A'ing them. And that's a significant investment in and of itself. So enough said. I think you all understand what I'm trying to say. And I'm pretty sure staff has heard what we're trying to say. So that's my thought, but thank you for taking me through this process. And I now realize my 400 series, because I'm still looking at hard copy rules, are outdated, which is why I'm missing a section. Thank you.
And Commissioner McGowan, I did pull up that 400 Rule 4304, and both Deputy Director Cuthbertson and Attorney Jost, do have it right, that the way we set it up is there's an annual review, and we set it up so that would be done by the director as opposed to the commission, because doing it by the commission is a bit onerous. And then if the director determines there are not making substantial progress towards its obligations, as demonstrated by the progress reporting, which is the annual review, then the director has several different things the director can request additional financial assurance file an application for the financial assurance hearing and request the commission order the operator to provide single well financial assurance. So that's a pretty big, in my eye at least, that's a pretty substantial review of the annual compliance. As Joe was right, depending upon the number of wells, there's any number of years that we designated. 1 to 10 wells, you got till December 31st of 27, 11 to 50, 2028, over 251, December 31st of 2030, et cetera. So I think, Deputy Director Cuthbertson, you've heard from the commission that we look forward to your annual reviews and reporting back if it doesn't look like the operator's not making substantial progress. Commissioner Messner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I appreciate this conversation. I think it is helpful. I will note, however, that, Rule 702D6, for the asset retirement planning, I think does contemplate, and we contemplated during the rulemaking, that there was, a clear asset retirement plan that included, planned dates. They weren't fixed dates, but they were planned dates. And even for the out of service wells, I would hope that these planned dates wouldn't just come to us for the last date in the term that they have, which in this instance is 7 years. But certainly, I think there's got to be some contemplation for the first couple of years regarding what may get P&A'd, and some showing that there is that asset retirement planning occurring beyond that. We're going to get it done by the end date. And I appreciate that there's a check and balance associated with this, with the annual review. But I do think as these financial assurance plans come to us initially, some showing that there is, a clear asset retirement planning, particularly for the first year or two, I think would be helpful and, is reasonable to expect from an operator. So,
Commissioner Cross?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to try and get a better idea of how OXY creates it. My apologies, dogs. How OXY creates its plugging list in terms of what's prioritized, what's completed, and how that changes throughout the year.
Sure, Commissioner Cross. Like I testified, you have your current development and you have offset operator development, and that's one of the main drivers of the P&As. Similarly to how we testify in our OGDPs, the asset retirement associated with those OGDPs. So I think at a high level, that's the main thing. And then now that this is in place, and we place so many wells on the out of service list, meeting these obligations, as we have just remarked on quite significantly, will be probably the remaining portion of those P&A targets.
And does the prioritization within that out of service list change on a monthly basis, quarterly basis? Like, is if something arises, do you modify what's kind of scheduled to be plugged first, or is that kind of set?
The prioritization needs to be set out several months in advance, obviously for running a business and keeping a rig schedule, but you have service owner preferences, the changes in the schedule of development with us and other operators. Those are always competing forces, but it needs to be laid out, pretty, by the 2 or 3 quarters in advance to be able to plan your business.
But within that 2 or 3 quarters, it might change in terms of what you're going to plug next.
It potentially could, correct.
Okay. That's the only questions I have right now, Mr. Chair.
Great, thanks. Further questions, commissioners? All right, seeing no further questions, Ms. Jose, would you like to wrap things up from your client's perspective?
I would. Thank you so much, Chair. Maybe just to follow up on both Commissioner Messner and Commissioner McGowan's comments, and Commissioner Messner, I think some of your concerns with the inactive well list, or I'm sorry, the out of service list. Oxy would offer to provide a written annual, basically report on its progress on the out of service list to the commission. Not a hearing, but a written report for the first 3 years, because we have a 3-year review of an option 6 plan. So we would be willing to offer that to you, and we would work with Mr. Cuthbertson and his team to ensure that that's in at or around the same time, I think, as the annual 6B review. So maybe that helps, so you could see the progress throughout the course of the first 3 years. And then when we are back in front of you for the 3-year review on an option 6, maybe we can revisit that annual report, but that's something that we think may be able to help you guys get some comfort in the asset retirement planning from the option 6 proposals.
I think that would be helpful to address the concerns raised by some of the commissioners. I think you're doing an annual review anyway with the deputy director. So that's probably not a lot of supplemental work. It probably is somewhat akin to what you might be providing the deputy director. And so, at least from this commissioner's perspective, I appreciate that notion, and appreciate Oxy's flexibility as we, sort of initially use these rules for operators that are pursuing the class 6 type of financial assurance plan. That might have been something that if we had the foresight, we would have, put into the rule itself. But thanks for volitionally offering that up. Commissioner McGowan, Commissioner Messner, are you both comfortable with that offer?
Mr. Chair, I appreciate that offer. I think that is helpful. For me, it really boils down to the transparency, not only to this commission, but to others that are listening that have been involved with both financial assurance rulemaking, and may just be interested. And so having that level of transparency that enables folks to see that progress and to see that asset retirement planning, particularly for this category of financial assurance, I think is really important. And so I appreciate that. And, maybe, others that may be listening that haven't done their option 6 plans yet may consider just incorporating that into an application. So thank you.
All right, further questions for the panel?
Chair, I do have one more point raised, basically to see if we can get some clarification on from our end. So thank you. In our application, we had requested that when Oxy files subsequent Form 3s, and so this would fall under Rule 702B2 under a revised financial assurance plan, there's a requirement that for any submitted revised financial assurance plan that does not qualify for director review, which would be an option 6, which is what we have here, that an operator has to file an application for hearing on each of those subsequent Form 3s. And then under the statement of basis and purpose, the anticipated reason for the filings of the subsequent Form 3s would basically be if an operator was going to alter the option for which the operator qualified under 702C, or that would change the amount of financial assurance that the operator would be required to submit. Oxy will likely have subsequent Form 3s if there is asset transfers or other items, but it would never change the option 6, and therefore it would never change the $40 million comprehensive bond. So we're looking to confirm the fact that when those subsequent Form 3s get filed by Oxy, we don't have to file an actual hearing application to come in front of you for each change, because we're not changing the option 6 or the $40 million bond. We're really looking at this from an administrative efficiency standpoint. So we're not overwhelming staff with additional hearings and overwhelming you with additional hearings. So I don't know if that's something we can decide today or you want us to work with staff on, but we did want to go ahead and just bring that up because it was a portion of our application.
So before the commissioners weigh in on that, I'd like to ask AG Davenport or Deputy Director Cuthbertson or Director Murphy or someone from staff to weigh in with their thoughts on that portion of the request here. Director Murphy?
Thank you, Chair. We think that's fair and correct, and recognizing that if something else were to come up that staff has a concern about, the staff has the ability to bring an issue forward also.
Okay, thank you for that. With that, does any commissioner have any questions with regard to this clarifying request? All right, seeing no questions on that point, I believe we have got ourselves to the deliberative stage of the proceedings. Does any commissioner desire to deliberate and or make a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Messner.
just a quick bit of deliberation and then I will make a motion, but I do appreciate that Oxy is the first review that we've had here, and so some of the questions that I'm asking are working through the process here. And so I appreciate the application. I appreciate the information that was provided in the presentation. I do think that that asset retirement planning, that analysis that's provided in an application, particularly for an option 6, as well as for other options that may come before us, I would prefer to see it have some more detail, even if it's a year or two, understanding that there's a significant amount of wells from some operators, but some clear showing that there's asset retirement planning, that there's site-specific planning, that there's basically just showing your work, which is what I'm sure you're already doing as part of your asset retirement planning. But I think the intent of that rule was for operators to show their work, to be able to have transparency in the process, and not just to trust and hope that everything was going to be okay. And those checks and balances are really important, particularly for comprehensive bonding, which a lot of people during the financial assurance rule were pretty opposed to. And so I think it's important that we are transparent in this process, and that there is a clear showing of reasonable asset retirement planning. And so with that, however, I do think that the application does meet the obligations of the rules. And so I would move to approve the application with the consideration that Ms. Jost provided, that the commission does get a written asset retirement document annually.
I'll second.
I have a motion and we have a second. Is there further deliberation? Well, I would just note for the record, now that we have a motion and a second, that I appreciate again Oxy's application. I believe it meets with our rules. I appreciate the affirmative volitional voluntary annual review to us. I think that helps. I think that despite the fact that there was some of the folks that were involved in our stakeholder process didn't like the idea of the option 6. I did. I think it meets with our rules. I think it's protective of the state of Colorado. I think that this is an example of utilization of one of the most protective financial assurance protocols within the nation. And so I'm a yes vote here, and look forward to seeing how this works over the course of the next few years with this company. With that, if there's no further deliberation, would look for a vote. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Jost, for the presentation.
Yes,
And thank you
Chair.
to also want to send a big thanks out to Deputy Director Cuthbertson as well as our staff. I know that the fact that this took 53 minutes is nowhere indicative of the amount of time and effort on the part of staff in getting this to the place that it's at. I can let the world know that implementing and establishing guidelines and implementation procedures around a wholly new set of financial assurance rules is a huge lift. And Colorado ought to be proud of the folks within the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission that have been working tirelessly on these plans. Again, every operator has to file a plan that is unique, that is new, that is protective. And I know there's been a ton of work done by our staff on this, as well as the operators. And so a hearty hear, aye, yahoo, good job to our staff for doing this. Okay, that is our first docket. We will need to break at about 10:10, but we might be able to get started with our second docket before then. And I note that it's the same lawyers involved. This is docket 2211-00284. This is a financial assurance plan for PDC Energy. Ms. Jost, are you presenting on this one as well?
Yes, Chair, I am.
Okay, we've got about 15 minutes before our scheduled break. It's kind of a hard stop because of some other obligations. Do you
Okay.
think you can get through your presentation in 15?
I do. I see Mr. Co-Chair and Ms. Chase is on. So let me switch out my PowerPoint and we will be ready to go.
Great.
Okay, excellent. I think Brian and Vanessa, can you hear me okay? Okay, excellent. All right, well, let me go ahead and pull up the presentation. Okay, well, again, good morning, Chair, Commissioners, staff, members of the public. Again, my name is Jamie Jost for Jost Energy Law, and I, along with my partner, Kelsey Wesselinki, represent PDC Energy on this Rule 702B and 702D Option 6 Financial Assurance Plan application. PDC is also pleased to be able to present its Option 6 plan to you today, and we look forward to our discussion. PDC submitted its Form 3 and corresponding Option 6 Financial Assurance application to the Commission on October 31st, 2022, in compliance with the date set forth by the Commission. And in its application, PDC also described each requirement under Rule 702D6 and provided evidence in support of its compliance with each requirement for PDC. In the application and in this presentation, you will see that Great Western and SRC Energy were mentioned as entities with specific wells and assets that were to be covered by PDC's Option 6 comprehensive bond. PDC is happy to be able to tell you, though, that today, as of April 26, 2023, so last Thursday, the Commission staff approved all of the pending Form 9 transfer of operatorships to PDC or another operator in the case of the one SRC Energy well. So any Great Western asset and numbers referenced during the presentation today should be considered PDC's assets. Since the director issued recommendations for both PDC and Great Western's assets, we kept the presentation consistent with the recommendations because we had already submitted it for your review. And then at the conclusion of our presentation, we would request that the Commission approve this Option 6 financial assurance plan. So Ms. Brian Co-Chair, Manager of Operations and Policy, will provide testimony today in support of the plan. And we also have Ms. Vanessa Chase, Regulatory Manager, with us today as an additional subject matter expert if you have any questions after we finish the presentation. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Jost. My name is Brian Co-Chair, and I'm Manager of Operational Compliance and Policy for PDC Energy. I will be presenting PDC's Option 6 Financial Assurance Plan that seeks $40 million comprehensive bond to you today. At the conclusion of this presentation, PDC Energy requests that the Commission approve its Option 6 Rule 702C6 and 702D6 Financial Assurance Plan pursuant to its Form 3. As Ms. Jost noted, PDC did receive COGCC approval of all pending Form 9s for Great Western and SRC Energy on April 26, 2023, after we submitted our presentation. And as of the date of the hearing, PDC is now confirmed in the COGCC records as the operator of Great Western's wells and assets. Although we understand that this Commission knows PDC and its development in the DJ for purposes of financial assurance presentation, we thought that it may be helpful to review a few aspects of PDC that those listening may not have heard. Currently, PDC has approximately $13.2 million in blanket, inactive well, and individual location bonding. Under Option 1, accounting for the $3,000 per well blanket bond, the 1.6% excess low producing single well financial assurance, and location specific bonds, PDC would be required to have approximately $18 million in bonding. PDC is proposing bonding of nearly 4 times what we currently carry and greater than double what would be required under option 1. Since 2017, PDC has plugged and reclaimed over 2,300 wells and has significant plug and reclaim goals for the DJ Basin as it continues to develop its Guanella CAP and OGDPs. PDC welcomes the opportunity to submit the option 6 $40 million comprehensive bond as a way to confirm its commitment to the protection of public health, safety, welfare, environment, and wildlife resources, and to further its commitment to its oil and gas development in the state of Colorado. PDC will also maintain individual location bonds in addition to the $40 million comprehensive bond. PDC was a strong proponent of the option 6 comprehensive $40 million bond during the rulemaking as a way to display the financial health and viability of a company. We also thought a key component of the financial assurance rulemaking, and one PDC strongly advocated for, was an industry-funded orphan well fund, which to date, PDC has contributed over $1.5 million to. When we submitted the Form 3 in this corresponding financial assurance plan hearing application on October 31st, 2022, PDC was seeking approval for the option 6 bond to cover PDC Energy Inc., Great Western Operating LLC, and 1 well as SRC Energy. On April 26, 2023, the commission staff approved all outstanding Form 9s. So as of today, we are now able to confirm that the $40 million comprehensive bond will just cover PDC Energy. For the purpose of this presentation, the content on the slides detail the separate entities, but I will present to the numbers cumulatively. For this, as of October 31st, 2022, PDC operated 3,594 wells. PDC submitted its Form 3 and corresponding financial assurance planning hearing application on October 13th, 2022, and utilized the staff's template format. Under Rule 702C6A, PDC meets all requirements in order to submit an option 6 comprehensive bond. Specifically, the rule requires that an operator have an average daily per well production that exceeds 40 BOE or 60 MCFE for previous 12 months and be a publicly traded company. PDC acquired Great Western in May of 2022, so all production included accounts for Great Westerns in the Form 3 calculation as well. When accounting for both entities, PDC's Colorado wells average GOR is 9,446 standard cubic feet per barrel, with an average production of 79 BOE per day for each well as determined by the Form 3 filing. In addition, PDC is a public company subject to the Securities Exchange Act of 1934. Rule 702 D6 Romanet 1 requires an operator seeking an option 6 plan to provide production data that illustrates the total MCF in barrels reported during the previous 12 months. PDC's cumulative production data illustrated 309,181,553 MCF and 34,239,757 barrels as determined in this Form 3 filing. Rule 702.6 Romanet 2 requires well status and designation data, which is shown in summary table accounting for all wells, including for the number of wells that falls within each operational status and designation as of the date of the financial plan is submitted. For PDC, as of October 31st, 2022, these numbers are 123 active permits, 328 wells with a status of drilling, 123 wells waiting on completion, 2,393 wells producing, 521 wells with a shut-in status, 106 wells temporarily abandoned, and 0 injection wells. Rule 702 D6 Romanet 3 requires PDC to provide well plugging data that illustrates the number of wells plugged and reclaimed by the operator during each of the previous 3 years. For PDC, those numbers are, as of October 31st, 2022, 229 wells, and as of December 31st, 2022, 274 wells, 415 wells in 2021, 422 wells in 2020, and 432 wells in 2019. Rule 702 D6 Romanet 4 requires PDC to provide an inactive well list, which is a list of all the operators' inactive wells that include the name, number, API number, status, reason for no or low production, and planned date for return to production or plug of the well. For PDC Energy, those numbers are 258 inactive wells and 610 low producing wells. And as of April 27th, 2023, 31% of PDC's low producing wells were placed on an out of service list. And for additional information in support of PDC's robust plug and reclaim program, PDC has submitted Form 6As for a total of 190 wells in 2023 so far. Rule 702 D6 Romanet 5 requires PDC to address its asset retirement planning, where PDC must demonstrate how the operator is planning for the retirement of its oil and gas operations based on the projected life of the field, age of the infrastructure, out of service, inactive, and low producing wells, and related information. And for each inactive well, the operator will identify the reason for no or low production and the planned date to return to production or plug the well. As we noted in our application and will adhere to today, PDC has been and will continue to plug and reclaim all legacy wells in a steady, predictable manner, which is evident throughout its recent OGDP applications and the approved Guanella cap, which will result in the plugging and reclaiming of up to 576 wells through the course of development. PDC maintains a detailed asset retirement obligation within its balance sheet, which accounts for all liabilities associated with its wells and facilities. Furthermore, PDC's commitment to asset retirement is evident in that from 2017 through present, PDC has plugged and reclaimed over 2,300 wells. In the calendar year 2021 alone, PDC plugged and reclaimed over 5 times more wells than it has drilled. PDC has a very robust production volume per well per day of approximately 79 BOE. PDC also has a very healthy low producing well percentage of approximately 17%. When accounting for the recently submitted out of service, this percentage goes down to 11.6% as we filed in October. Furthermore, as we stand today, we are at 7.7% low producing wells based on COGCC statistics as of today. As we have outlined with the production volumes on both gross and per well, extremely low percentage of low producing wells, and 75% of our producing wells being horizontals, PDC has an incredibly healthy asset. When evaluating out of service wells, PDC was already under the threshold of 25% low producing wells for option 6. So we took a different approach. We utilized the list to help PDC meet its emission reduction targets, as many of these wells and associated facilities were actively producing. Our goal was not only to create an out of service wells, but ensure all wells that tie into a facility were placed into out of service, meaning every facility would be shut in as well, no longer separating and producing hydrocarbons and no longer the source of emissions. For this, 89 associated facilities will no longer be active, and we will eliminate approximately 250,000 tons of CO2 equivalent emissions annually. In compliance with Rule 702 D6D, PDC provided the requisite certification of financial capability executed by PDC's Vice President of Finance, Mr. William Crawford. PDC provided substantial notice under the rules to 4 state agencies, the BLM, 3 counties, and 17 cities, towns, or municipalities. We did not have any questions or comments from any of the interested parties. The director's recommendation, effective April 7th, 2023, recommends acceptance of PDC's financial assurance plan and Form 3. Specifically, the director's recommendation provides for a total bonding amount of $40,200,000. As I mentioned earlier, this is in addition to the location-specific bonds PDC currently maintains and is committed to maintaining in the future. The breakdown of bonding is Rule 702, $40 million. Rule 703, $100,000, which is the amount of financial assurance for gas gathering, processing, and underground gas storage facilities. and Rule 704, $100,000, which is the amount of statewide blanket surface owner protection fund. Thank you for hearing us today. And to conclude, PDC respectfully requests that this commission approve its option 6, Rule 702C6 and 702D6 financial assurance plan. We are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great. Thank you for the presentation. We've gotten right up to our morning break, so let's take a 15-minute break and let's just take a 20-minute break. Let's return at 10:20 or 10:30, and then we'll do questions then. Thank you. Before we address questions to the applicant, if the applicant's okay with it, I would like to recognize Deputy Director Cuthbertson just to see if staff has anything further on this proposed financial assurance plan.
Thank you, Chair. So I just have one observation, and I'm appreciate that we were able to get the Great Western transfer approved in time for this hearing. That had been an objective just for data integrity, data cleanup, data consistency. The way our data is managed is it's managed by the Form 3. So in order to maintain the correct associations in the database, I would like to request the applicant file a new Form 3. They don't need to file a new hearing, obviously, application. I just would appreciate a new Form 3 so that the data is correctly associated in the database and the correct Form 3 document number is associated with this hearing that represents the wells that will be properly assigned to PDC as a part of their plan, rather than us having to come back at a later date and do some kind of an update. I think it would just be much more effective if we could just get a new Form 3. I did log into the database to check to make sure that the well transfers had in fact been acknowledged by the Form 3, and they have. And there is no change in financial assurance that the director would be recommending. It's still the $40,200,000 is the same financial assurance for an updated Form 3. So I would just like to make that request, Mr. Chair, just for the purposes of maintaining our data integrity and the associations of a Form 3 form number to this hearing order, should the commission approve this application.
Great. Ms. Jost, did you want to respond to that?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Cuthbertson. Yes, PDC is completely open to submitting the updated and new Form 3, and they will do that in the timelines provided by the commission.
Great. Okay, getting back to our normally scheduled business, we are at that point where commissioners have a chance to ask questions of the panel. Does any commissioner have questions? Commissioner Messner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not so much a question as a comment. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the application. And I do appreciate that your Form 3 inactive well spreadsheet does actually have dates that just aren't the end of the 7-year timeline that's associated with the out of service wells, understanding that this plugging list, this inactive well list contemplates wells that aren't on the out of service well list, but that does have dates that are different years other than 2012, 31, 2029. And so it does seem probable that it can be done in order to have a planning list on your inactive wells that have different dates other than the last date available. So just wanted to say thank you for that. That is clear and transparent and ties into your asset retirement plan. So thank you for that.
Other questions or comments? Well, the panel must have done a very good job, because I'm not seeing a need for other questions or comments. We then would turn to deliberations and/or a motion. Commissioner Ackerman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would be happy to make a motion to approve this proposal as proposed.
Second.
Motion and a second. Do we have any further deliberations? Well, as last time, I've got a few comments about this. I appreciate PDC working with other stakeholders through the rulemaking process that got us to where we are today to develop the different options in Colorado's financial assurance program. And I see and appreciate the commitment to funding the orphan well work like many other operators and a complete approvable proposal for financial assurance. This commission is creating a new program for something like financial assurance that is very difficult, and turning on these new rules requires a commitment to transparency and accountability. I see that demonstrated by PDC in its application, the hearing testimony, and its willingness to work through the new forms and processes, especially those related to the transfers of assets given PDC's acquisition of Great Western. I would note that with today's assuming this one gets approved too, we have formally folded in roughly 17% of Colorado's wells into a new financial assurance paradigm. And this is in addition to the work staff has performed to implement the financial assurance plans administratively that are going to be administratively approved. I think that's a big deal. I think that's a good day for the state of Colorado. With that, I would look to have a vote. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Would note, did we need to do anything, AAG Davenport or anyone else with regard to that Form 3 notion that Deputy Director Cuthbertson threw out there? Hi there, AAG Davenport.
Hello, Chair. Excuse me. No, I don't believe so. I think the direction was clear. The motion approves the application and PDC is committed to filing an updated Form 3. So I don't think anything further needs to be done.
Okay, then I think we're good to go. Thank you to the panel. Thank you to staff. Appreciate the work here, and we will move to our next docket. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I think we still need to take a vote on that.
Oh, did we not take?
Did I miss? Did we? I don't think we took a vote.
I thought we did take a.
Oh, did we? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think we did, and that's why I was a little worried about the Form 3 because that was after the vote. So I think we're good.
Thanks.
Okay. With that, we need to remove those folks from the panel, and we need to spend a little bit of time bringing up the next panel. This is docket 2212-00341. And this is a financial assurance plan for Marilex Resources Incorporated. And I believe we have Mr. Willis as the attorney for the applicant. I see that he's on the screen. We need to see if he has any members of Marilex that would also need to be on the screen.
I was muted. Chair, I don't have anybody else that I'm going to present at this time. That's part and parcel to what my request is here today. Given the fact that this matter has been filed for hearing today, after discussing the matter with my client, as well as working with staff, including Mr. Cuthbertson, I believe we'd like to move to withdraw the application at this time and look forward to resubmitting a new and conforming Form 3, which elects option 1, and look forward to bonding fully under the expectations and rules set forth in that option.
Deputy, okay, thank you very much, Mr. Willis. Appreciate that. It is your and your client's application. So I'm hearing that you ask for a continuance, I take it, so that you can resubmit something, or just to vacate the hearing today?
Withdraw the application,
okay.
Chair, and in essence, vacate the hearing today.
Okay. Deputy Director Cuthbertson, did you have comments on this?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think in the interest of an effective path forward And maybe a little bit of context for the commissioners who I know you haven't been able to see our form in action yet. But the Form 3 is a really elegant solution that several of our staff worked to try to make sure we manage this complex set of rule-based data effectively. And so every form has the opportunity for the applicant to choose either option 1, 2, 3, or 4, which they all qualify for one of those, or option 5, as this applicant did. Option 5 obviously requires this hearing. So the Form 3 that was submitted has an alternative option 1 plan that is more or less consistent with the conversation that I've had with Mr. Willis. And so my request would be, even though, and maybe I misunderstood some of what Mr. Willis was going to ask for, my request would be that the commission not simply vacate the hearing, but to authorize me to modify the form that was submitted to indicate Mr. Willis's client's preference now to unselect the option 5, which would then automatically select the option 1. And then we could approve that form, and they would have an approved financial plan in place that could then be modified. I know that there are some facilities that they believe should no longer be subject to coverage under the plan. The rules allow 90 days for them to submit the additional financial assurance. I think 90 days would be plenty of time for them to work out any transfers or any corrections in the administrative data that they feel like is appropriate, and could then file a revised Form 3 when that's done due to the change in circumstances associated with that. But in the meantime, we would have an approved financial plan in place if the commission would authorize me to modify that application in accordance with the expressed desire of the operator today to no longer pursue the option 5 plan, which in my reading means they are choosing that option 1 plan. And the only way for that to change at this point is for me or my staff to go in and edit that plan and select that option and then approve that plan. The plan would be approvable by the director. The option 1 plan is the the plan that's associated with wells that have the highest average daily well production per well production over the previous 12 months. In anticipation of this request, I did review that plan. It is approvable. And so within a matter of days, we could have an approved plan on the record for this operator if the commission was comfortable with me taking that action. And then you can resolve, I guess, however you would have to resolve the hearing today is beyond my understanding, since I'm just an engineer. All I can think of is engineer solutions. So that would be my input, Chair. Thank you.
And I did note from the review of the application that it started at option 1, which was a pretty big number. It went to option 5. And then in your pre-hearing statement, Mr. Willis, you reverted to option 1 with the $432,000 bond, which is $12,000 per well times 36 wells. And you're seeking an exemption for the surface owner bond because you've got surface use agreements, and you indicated that you don't have any facility, so you didn't need a facility bond. And if I'm hearing from Deputy Director Cuthbertson, this pivot on the behalf of Marilex would result in this being administratively dealt with by the deputy or by the director, and there wouldn't be a need for a hearing with the commission. Do I have all that right?
Yes, I do. I do believe you're correct. I think your brief is right. I don't think the financial assurance piece will be heard by the commission. I think it'll be administrative.
Okay. I'm comfortable with that. Again, it's, go ahead, Commissioner, Deputy
I'm
Director
sorry.
Cuthbertson.
I'm sorry, Chair. For the record, I just wanted to make it clear that the request I just made was also part of the director's recommendation that we did submit prior to the hearing today. We recommended that the commission approve the alternate option 1 plan that was included in the submitted Form 3. So I just wanted to make the record clear that it was part of the director's recommendation that we submitted as a part of this hearing.
But again, I'm hearing now that since this is moving back to an option 1, that's an administrative approval from the director, and we really don't have an involvement in that. And so, having said all that, I'm comfortable with the applicant's request. AAG Davenport, if you might visualize yourself, I think really what we should do today is just vacate the hearing, and then administratively, Mr. Willis and his client can work with the director on their revised option 1, and we're not involved. Does that sound fair?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think that is procedurally accurate. What I've heard is essentially that the operator has requested that or wants to make a change to their Form 3 to select a different option that wouldn't require a commission hearing, that staff doesn't object to that change. And so I do think in this case, it is the operator's option to select something different if they want to. And obviously, it would still require director approval. So nothing's being approved. But since the option that the operator is requesting to now go under does not require a commission hearing, I think the hearing today can be vacated.
Okay. And so for those listening in who may not understand the intricacies of the financial assurance regulations we have in place now, essentially, the operator had previously sought what was called an option 5 plan. And that is we might fit into one of the other categories, but we want our own specific plan tailored to our needs. Option 5 plans come to the commission for hearing. But now the operator is using its discretion to seek an option 1 plan, and that does not come to the commission for hearing, and it instead is dealt with via the director and our staff. So with that explanation, appreciate Mr. Willis you being here. Appreciate Mr. Cuthbertson for being around and providing perspective. I would look for a motion to vacate the hearing on 2212-00341.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Willis, we'll let you and your client Marilex Resources go sort this matter out with the director, and all the best and good luck on all that. And
Thank you, Chair.
Excused.
Thank you.
All right. With that, I believe we've come to the end of our agenda. If no one has anything else, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.